Jake Morrison stood in the grand hall of Kepler Prime Station. The massive chamber stretched out before him like a metal canyon. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the curved seats that rose up toward the ceiling. Their strange shapes and colors made the place look like a bizarre rainbow come to life. Jake had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years. He had given this same speech dozens of times before. Each time he hoped things would be different. Each time he was wrong. The blue-skinned, Zephyrian delegate was speaking now. His voice carried through the hall like a snake's hiss. "The humans entered our sacred territory without permission," he said. "We had every right to defend ourselves." Jake's hands tightened into fists at his sides. Sacred territory. That was what they called the trade routes that humans had been using for 20 years. Routes that the Federation had approved. Routes that were marked on every official star map. "Ambassador Morrison," the Federation chairman called out. The tall gray creature had no name that human tongues could pronounce. Jake just called him chairman in his head. "You may respond." Jake walked to the center of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. He looked up at the hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. Some showed curiosity. Most showed boredom. A few showed open hatred. "Honored delegates," Jake began. His voice was steady, even though his heart was racing. The ship that was attacked was a colony vessel. It carried 847 civilians. Men, women, and children. They were following approved trade routes to establish a farming colony on Kepler 7. He paused and looked directly at the Zephyrian delegate. "They sent surrender signals on all frequencies. They begged for mercy. Your ships ignored those pleas and continued firing for 3 hours. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Jake heard some aliens clicking their tongues or making other sounds of disapproval. But he knew they were not disapproving of the Zephyrians. They were disapproving of him for bringing it up. The Zephyrian delegate rose from his seat. "The humans have been expanding too quickly," he said. "They take planets that rightfully belong to older species. We cannot allow this aggression to continue." Jake felt a familiar anger building in his chest. He had heard these same words before. Humans were always expanding too quickly. Humans were always being too aggressive. Humans were always the problem. "Since joining the Federation 43 years ago," Jake said, "humanity has established exactly 17 colonies. In that same time, the Zephyrian Empire has claimed 42 new worlds. The Krillian Republic has claimed 38. The Vorthan Collective has claimed 51. He gestured toward the alien delegates. "Yet somehow humanity is expanding too quickly." The chairman's voice boomed across the chamber. "Ambassador Morrison, please limit your remarks to the current incident." Jake nodded, though inside he was screaming. The current incident. As if this was just one isolated problem instead of part of a pattern that had been going on for decades. "The colony ship New Hope was destroyed without cause," Jake said. "The Federation's own investigation confirmed that no weapons were found on board, no military personnel, no threat to anyone. 847 innocent people died because they were human." A four-armed delegate from the Nexian Assembly spoke up. "Perhaps humans should be more careful about where they travel. The galaxy is a dangerous place." Jake stared at the alien. "So human civilians deserve to die for using approved trade routes?" "I did not say that," the Nexian replied. "But actions have consequences." The familiar pattern was playing out again. Humans would be attacked. Humans would ask for justice. The Federation would find reasons why the attacks were justified or unavoidable. Nothing would change. Jake pulled out a data pad and began reading. "In the past 5 years, human ships have been attacked 312 times while using approved Federation routes. Human colonies have been raided 89 times. Human traders have been robbed or murdered 1,247 times. In each case, the Federation has found reasons to excuse or minimize these attacks." He looked up at the sea of alien faces. "How many more humans must die before the Federation takes action?" The chairman leaned forward on his massive throne. "Ambassador Morrison, the Federation takes all reports of violence seriously. However, we must consider the cultural and historical contexts of each incident. Cultural context. Jake had heard that phrase 1,000 times. It was code for, "We don't care what happens to humans." A new voice spoke up. It belonged to the Krillian delegate, whose species looked like walking lizards. "Perhaps the problem is that humans refuse to adapt to galactic norms. You insist on maintaining your primitive customs instead of embracing more advanced ways of thinking." Jake felt his patience wearing thin. "Our primitive customs include things like not murdering civilians and honoring trade agreements. If those are primitive, then I'm proud to be primitive." Angry hisses and clicks filled the chamber. Several delegates stood up and began shouting in their alien languages. Jake had insulted them by suggesting that human values might be superior to theirs. The chairman slammed a massive gavel on his desk. The sound echoed like thunder. "Order! We will have order!" When the noise died down, the chairman continued. "Ambassador Morrison, humanity's request for protected status under Federation law has been reviewed by this body. The vote will now be taken." Jake watched as the voting began. Red lights began appearing on the great board behind the chairman's throne. Red meant no. Green meant yes. Blue meant abstain. Red light after red light appeared. The Zephyrians voted no. The Krillians voted no. The Vorthans voted no. The Nexians voted no. Species after species rejected humanity's plea for basic protection. When the voting ended, Jake stared at the board in disbelief. 847 red lights, 1 blue light from the Althean delegate who always abstained from everything. 0 green lights. "The motion fails," the chairman announced. "Humanity's request for protected status is denied." Jake stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by hundreds of aliens who had just voted that human lives didn't matter. The silence stretched on for long moments. Finally, Jake spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the hall. "I understand," he said. "The message is clear." He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the silence. As he reached the door, he pulled out his communication device and sent a simple message to Earth. "Diplomacy has failed." Jake Morrison left the Federation Council chamber, for the last time. Behind him, the alien delegates were already moving on to other business. The fate of humanity was just another item crossed off their agenda. But Jake knew something they didn't. Earth had been preparing for this day for a very long time. The rejection wasn't unexpected. It was just confirmation of what humanity had already learned. The galaxy didn't want them as equals. Perhaps it was time to stop asking for permission to exist. 3 weeks had passed since the Federation rejected humanity's plea for protection. Admiral Ben Hayes stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the empty space where New Boston should have been. The colony had gone silent 2 days ago. All communication stopped in the middle of a routine morning report. The last message was from Colony Administrator Lucy White, talking about the Harvest Festival planned for next month. "Admiral," Captain Frank Miller called from the communications station, "we're getting close enough for visual scans." Ben nodded grimly. He had commanded ships for 30 years. He had seen battle zones and disaster sites. But something about this felt different. The silence from New Boston wasn't just radio failure, it was too complete, too final. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The main display flickered to life. Where New Boston should have been, there was only scorched earth. The city that had housed 2.3 million people was gone. Not damaged, not partially destroyed, completely erased. Dr. Helen Rogers gasped from her position at the science station. "My God," she whispered. "What happened here?" Ben stared at the devastation. New Boston had been one of humanity's most successful colonies. The domed cities had sparkled like jewels against the planet's purple sky. Farms had stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. Children had played in parks while their parents worked in research labs and manufacturing centers. Now there was nothing but glass and ash. "Take us into orbit," Ben commanded. "I want a full scan of the planet's surface." As the fleet moved closer, the extent of the destruction became clear. Every building had been reduced to melted slag. Every farm had been burned to bare soil. The orbital elevators that connected the surface to the space stations were twisted metal falling toward the ground. "Sir," Dr. Rogers called out. Her voice was shaking. "I'm detecting energy signatures in the debris. Krillian weapon traces." Ben felt his blood turn cold. The Krillians were one of the most aggressive species in the Federation. They had been pushing for war with humanity for years. But this went far beyond anything they had done before. "Are you certain?" he asked. "Positive, sir. The energy patterns match their plasma bombardment systems. But—" She paused, checking her readings again. "The intensity levels are extreme. They didn't just attack the colony. They glass-melted the entire surface." Captain Miller looked up from his station. "Admiral, we're receiving a data burst from one of the orbital monitoring stations. It survived the attack. Put it through." The bridge fell silent as they watched the recording. It showed Krillian warships dropping out of hyperspace around New Boston. Dozens of massive vessels, more firepower than had ever been assembled in one place. The colony's defense coordinator, a young man named Pete Johnson, appeared on screen. His face was pale but determined. "This is New Boston Defense Control to all ships. We are under attack by unknown vessels. We are not equipped for military action. Requesting immediate assistance." The recording jumped forward in time. Now Pete's face was streaked with tears and dirt. Behind him, emergency lights flashed red. "This is New Boston. We surrender. Repeat, we surrender unconditionally. Please stop firing. We have women and children here. Please." The Krillian ships continued their bombardment. The recording jumped again. Pete was gone. In his place was Colony Administrator Lucy White. Blood ran down her face from a head wound. "To anyone receiving this signal," she said, "New Boston is dying. They won't stop. They won't accept our surrender. Tell Earth. Tell them we tried to live in peace." The transmission cut to static. Dr. Rogers was crying now. Several other crew members had turned away from the screen. Ben himself felt sick to his stomach. "Sir," the communications officer called out. "There's more. The station recorded the Krillian fleet's internal communications during the attack." "Play it." The voice that came through the speakers was rough and filled with cruel laughter. It spoke in the clicking language of the Krillians, but the translation program converted it to English. "Look at them run," the voice said. "Like insects when you lift a rock." Another voice joined in. "The little humans think their surrender means something. How amusing." "Keep firing," ordered a third voice. "I want to see how long they keep begging." Laughter filled the channel. The Krillians were enjoying themselves. Ben closed his eyes. In 30 years of military service, he had never heard anything so evil. These weren't soldiers fighting a war. They were monsters enjoying torture. "Admiral." "Doctor," Rogers said quietly. "There's something else. The timestamps on these recordings show the bombardment continued for 6 hours after all life signs disappeared from the surface." 6 hours? "Yes, sir. They kept firing at empty ground. Just because they could." Ben opened his eyes and looked at the destruction on the screen. 2.3 million people. Gone. Not in battle, not defending their homes against armed enemies. Murdered while trying to surrender. "Set course for Federation Station Alpha," he ordered. "We're taking this evidence to the Council." The journey to the Federation Station took 4 days. During that time, Ben reviewed the evidence over and over. The recordings were clear. The energy signatures were undeniable. The Krillians had committed genocide against unarmed civilians. When they arrived at the station, Ben requested an emergency session with the Federation Council. He was told he would have to wait 3 weeks for a regular session. Ben's response was simple. "Then I'll wait in the council chambers until you're ready to see me." The Federation chairman finally agreed to see him after Ben had spent 18 hours sitting outside the council room. "Admiral Hayes," the chairman said as Ben entered the chamber, "you requested this meeting to discuss the incident at New Boston." "Incident?" Ben repeated. "Is that what you call the murder of 2.3 million civilians?" The Krillian delegate rose from his seat. "Admiral, you speak of murder. But our intelligence indicated that New Boston was developing weapons for use against peaceful species. Ben stared at the lizard-like alien. What weapons? They were farmers and researchers. Our scans detected dangerous energy signatures. Those were farming equipment and research labs, Ben said. Dr. Rogers examined every piece of debris. There were no weapons. The Krillian delegate's tail twitched with what might have been amusement. Perhaps your Dr. Rogers missed something. Ben felt rage building in his chest. Are you calling her a liar? I am suggesting that humans often see what they wish to see. Ben pulled out a datapad and activated the holographic display. The recorded images of New Boston's destruction filled the air above the council chamber. Watch this, he said. Watch. Hear people laughing as children die. Listen to them joke about human suffering. The recordings played in the silent chamber. When they ended, Ben looked around at the alien delegates. Most refused to meet his eyes. The evidence is clear, Ben said. The Krillians committed genocide against unarmed civilians. They ignored surrender attempts and continued firing for hours after everyone was dead. What is the Federation going to do about it? The chairman was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. The matter will be investigated thoroughly. Investigated? Ben's voice rose. You have the evidence right here. Evidence can be interpreted in different ways, the Krillian delegate said. Perhaps New Boston was destroyed by an internal accident. Perhaps the humans are trying to frame us for their own failures. Ben felt something break inside him. These aliens weren't going to help. They were going to protect the murderers and blame the victims. I see, he said quietly. Thank you for making your position clear. Ben left the Federation station and returned to his ship. Once they were in hyperspace, heading back to Earth, he sent a priority message to President Carol Adams. The message was short. New Boston is gone. All 2.3 million dead. Federation refuses to act. Recommend Protocol 7. On Earth, President Adams read the message while standing in her office. She walked to her window and looked out at the city beyond. Somewhere out there, 2.3 million families were about to learn that their loved ones were dead, murdered, and their killers would face no consequences. She picked up her secure phone and dialed a number that few people on Earth even knew existed. General Patricia Stone, she said when the call connected. Implement Protocol 7 immediately. Understood, Madam President, came the reply. How long do you want me to wait? Carol Adams looked out at the peaceful city one more time. Soon, that peace would end. But maybe, just maybe, something better would take its place. Don't wait, she said. Begin now. Captain Frank Miller received the message while his cargo ship was docked at Vorthon Station 7. 3 simple words changed everything. Return home immediately. Frank had been running cargo between human and alien worlds for 15 years. His ship, the Pacific Dawn, carried medical supplies, rare metals, and scientific equipment. He knew every trade route in this sector of space. But now Earth was calling him home. The Vorthon customs officer was a blob-like creature with too many eyes. It studied Frank's departure papers with obvious confusion. Your cargo hold is still half full, the alien said in its wet, gurgling voice. You have contracts to fulfill. Frank shrugged. Plans change, I'm going home. But the penalty fees for breaking contracts, Earth will pay them. Frank walked away, leaving the confused alien behind. As he headed toward his ship, he noticed something strange. Other human captains were doing the same thing. Ships that had been docked for maintenance were suddenly launching. Cargo vessels were abandoning their routes. Passenger ships were changing destinations. Every human ship in the sector was going home. On the bridge of his ship, Frank's communication officer, Lisa Turner, looked worried. Captain, I'm getting reports from all over the galaxy. Every human vessel is receiving the same recall order. Frank nodded as he strapped himself into the pilot's seat. Then we better not be the last ones to leave. The Pacific Dawn lifted off from Vorthon Station 7 and jumped to hyperspace. Behind them, alien traders watched in confusion as their most reliable business partner simply vanished. At Federation Station Proxima Hub, the largest trading post in the galaxy, Zephyrian merchant HFY was celebrating. The blue-skinned trader had just received news that all human cargo ships were leaving the sector. Finally, he told his drinking companions, no more competition from those annoying humans. His friend Zexmar raised his glass of fermented algae juice. Now we can charge whatever prices we want, the other species will have to pay. Exactly, HFY agreed. The humans were always undercutting our prices with their cheap goods. Now that they're gone, we'll make real profits. Around the bar, other alien traders were having similar conversations. The humans had been major players in galactic trade for decades. Their departure would create opportunities for everyone else, but not everyone was celebrating. Yendar, an observer from the peaceful Althean Republic, sat alone at a corner table. His tall, thin frame was hunched over a datapad as he studied shipping reports. The numbers troubled him. Human cargo ships handled 30% of all interspecies trade. Human passenger vessels carried 20% of all galactic travelers. Human research ships were responsible for 40% of all scientific discoveries shared through Federation databases. And now, they were all leaving. Yendar sent a message to his superiors on the Althean homeworld. Human withdrawal appears complete, he wrote. Recommend caution. Species with this level of integration do not usually abandon galactic society without reason. The reply came back 3 days later. Your concern is noted and filed for future reference. Dr. Sam Parker stood in the laboratory he had called home for 12 years. The human research station Kepler-12 orbited a dying star, studying its final stages of life. The work was important. The team was close to breakthroughs in stellar engineering that could save dying worlds across the galaxy. But the recall order was absolute. Every human facility was to be abandoned immediately. Doctor, his assistant Jenny Adams said, the transport ship is here. We need to go. Sam looked around the lab one more time. Months of research sat in computer banks. Years of observations were stored in data crystals. All of it would be left behind. What about our work with the Althean scientists? Jenny asked. They're expecting our report on stellar collapse patterns. Sam sealed the last container of research materials. Send them our apologies. Tell them the project is terminated. As their transport ship left the station, Sam watched through the viewport. The research facility grew smaller and smaller until it was just another speck of light among the stars. Somewhere in that facility, alien scientists would find empty labs and abandoned experiments. They would wonder why their human colleagues had vanished without explanation. Captain Nancy Ford of the Federation patrol ship Harmony was investigating reports of ghost ships in the outer systems. Human vessels were being found drifting empty in space. No crew, no passengers, no signs of struggle. It's like they just walked off their ships and disappeared, her security chief reported. Nancy studied the latest report. A human mining vessel had been found orbiting an asteroid field. Its cargo holds were full of valuable minerals. Its life support systems were running normally, but every human on board was gone. Have we found any bodies? She asked. No, Captain. No signs of violence either. It's as if the crews simply chose to leave. Nancy frowned. In 20 years of service, she had never seen anything like this. Entire populations didn't just vanish without a trace. Meanwhile, in human space, something unprecedented was happening. Ships that had been scattered across the galaxy were arriving at Earth by the thousands. Cargo vessels, research ships, exploration craft, passenger liners, and military escorts all converged on humanity's home system. Admiral Ben Hayes coordinated the massive fleet from his command ship. The number of arriving vessels was staggering. Earth's orbital traffic control was struggling to handle the volume. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we're receiving confirmation from all sectors. The recall is complete. Every human ship, station, and outpost has been evacuated. Ben nodded grimly. Phase 1 of Protocol 7 was finished. For the first time in 43 years, humanity had completely withdrawn from galactic society. What's our status on Phase 2? He asked. All research teams report ready, sir. The new technologies are operational. And Phase 3? Standing by for your order, sir. Ben looked out at the massive fleet surrounding Earth. Thousands of ships carrying millions of people who had once believed they could find a home among the stars. They had tried diplomacy. They had followed alien laws. They had respected alien customs. They had been rewarded with hatred, violence, and genocide. Maintain current status, Ben ordered. Wait for the signal from Earth. Back at Federation Station, Proxima Hub, the celebration was getting louder. Alien traders were already raising prices on goods that humans used to provide cheaply. Species that had relied on human research were scrambling to find new sources of scientific data. HFY was drunk on success and fermented algae juice. I tell you, he slurred to his companions, this is the best thing that ever happened. No more humans means more profit for everyone else. His friend Zexmar laughed. They probably ran home crying to their mothers. Humans were always too weak. For space travel, anyway. Around the bar, aliens nodded in agreement. The humans had been useful for trade and research, but they had never really belonged in the galaxy. They were too emotional, too attached to primitive concepts like mercy and justice. Good riddance. But in a quiet corner of the station, Yendar was still studying his datapad. The numbers told a different story. Human space had gone completely dark. No communications, no navigation signals, no energy signatures. It was as if an entire civilization had simply turned itself off. Yendar had lived for 300 years. He had seen species rise and fall. He had watched empires crumble and new powers emerge. But he had never seen anything like this. A species didn't withdraw this completely unless they were planning something. And given what had happened to New Boston, Yendar suspected that whatever the humans were planning, it wouldn't be peaceful. He sent another message to his superiors, more urgent. This time, human withdrawal complete and total. All human space now silent. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact to determine intentions. The reply came back within hours. Your reports are noted. Focus on your assigned duties and stop speculating about human activities. Yendar set down his datapad and looked out. At the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was planning its next move. And based on everything he had observed, he didn't think the galaxy would like what came next. The silence from human space stretched on. Days passed, then weeks. The galaxy began to adjust to life without humans. Trade routes were redrawn. Scientific projects were abandoned or reassigned. The Federation Council removed humanity from all committees and voting rosters. It was as if humans had never existed at all, but Yendar kept watching the dark regions of space where humanity had once lived. And sometimes, late at night, he thought he saw something moving in that darkness, something large and patient and utterly alien, something that was watching back. 6 months after humanity vanished from the galaxy, the first impossible thing happened. The Krillian homeworld went silent. Their last transmission came at 1432 Galactic Standard Time. The message was from their planetary defense commander, a lizard-like creature named Sektar. His voice was filled with panic. Unknown vessels approaching the homeworld, he broadcast. We cannot identify their origin or technology. They are not responding to our hails. They appear to be... The transmission cut off mid-sentence. Captain Nancy Ford of the Federation investigation ship Harmony arrived at the Krillian system 3 days later. What she found defied all logic. The planet was still there. All the cities were intact. The orbital stations floated in their assigned positions, but every living thing was gone. I'm reading 0 life signs, Dr. Alan Price reported from his science station. No Krillians, no pets, no bacteria, nothing alive at all. Nancy stared at the planet on her main screen. Krillos had been home to 8 billion lizard-like creatures. Now it was a ghost world. Any signs of weapons damage? She asked. None, Captain. The cities looked like everyone just walked away. Commander Betty Chen looked up from her tactical station. Captain, we're detecting the Krillian Grand Fleet about 6 light-years from here. They're not responding to our calls. Set course for their position. When the Harmony reached the Krillian fleet, Nancy felt a chill run down her spine. 47 warships floated in perfect formation. Every ship was intact. Every system was running normally. But like their homeworld, the ships were empty of all life. "Captain?" Dr. Price called out. His voice was shaking. "I'm picking up some kind of energy readings from the flagship." "What kind of readings?" "I don't know. The sensors show the crew is still aboard, but they're not alive, not exactly." Nancy felt her stomach turn. "Explain." "Their bodies are there, but their brain patterns are wrong. It's like they're stuck in some kind of loop." Nancy ordered her team to board the Krillian flagship. What they found would haunt her for the rest of her life. The Krillian crew sat at their stations, staring at blank screens. Their eyes were open but saw nothing. When Nancy's team tried to speak to them, the aliens responded with the same words over and over. "Please don't hurt us. We surrender. Please don't hurt the children." Dr. Price ran a medical scan on one of the Krillians. "Captain, this is impossible. They're experiencing the memories and emotions of other beings. Specifically, they're reliving the final moments of the humans who died at New Boston." Nancy felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" "They're feeling what those colonists felt when they were being murdered. The fear, the pain, the desperation, and according to these readings, they've been experiencing it continuously for the past 6 months. Nancy backed away from the catatonic alien. "That's not possible. No technology can do that." "No known technology," Dr. Price corrected. Over the following weeks, similar incidents began occurring across the galaxy. The Zephyrian raiders who had attacked human trade ships were found drifting in space, their minds trapped in endless loops of terror. Vorthon customs officials who had harassed human travelers began experiencing collective nightmares so vivid they refused to sleep. Each affected species had one thing in common. They had committed acts of violence against human civilians. Yendar, the Althean observer, was one of the first to recognize the pattern. From his position on Federation Station Proxima Hub, he watched the reports flooding in from across the galaxy. "It's selective," he told his assistant while reviewing the data. "Only species that directly harmed humans are being affected." "But how is it possible?" his assistant asked. "Who has this kind of power?" Yendar looked out at the stars, toward the dark region of space where humanity had vanished. "I think we're about to find out." The breakthrough came when Dr. Price's team discovered something extraordinary aboard the Krillian flagship. Hidden in the ship's computer core was a message that shouldn't have been there. It was written in perfect Krillian script, but the words were in English. "Justice is not revenge," the message read. "It is consequence. You chose to ignore the pleas of the innocent. Now you will understand what your victims felt." Nancy stared at the message on her screen. "How did this get here? Our scans show no signs of outside interference." "I don't know, Captain," Dr. Price replied. "It's as if the message just appeared in their computer systems." The same message was found on every affected ship and station, always in the local language, always in English words, always impossible to explain. The Federation Council called an emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to discuss the impossible events plaguing the galaxy. "This is clearly some kind of attack," declared the Zephyrian delegate. "The humans have developed a new weapon." The Vorthon representative, a blob-like creature with quivering tentacles, agreed. "We demand immediate action against Earth." But Yendar stood up to speak. His tall, thin frame commanded attention in the chamber. "With respect, honored delegates," he said, "we have no proof that humans are responsible for these events." "Who else could it be?" the Zephyrian hissed. "I don't know," Yendar admitted. "But consider this. Every affected species participated in violence against human civilians. Species that maintained peaceful relations with humanity have been completely unaffected." The chamber fell silent. Yendar continued. "The Althean Republic has maintained friendly relations with humanity for 40 years. We have experienced no unusual phenomena. The Centauri Federation, which has several defense treaties with human colonies, reports nothing abnormal." He gestured toward the alien delegates. "But every species that attacked human ships, raided human colonies, or supported the destruction of New Boston has reported these impossible events. The Krillian delegate tried to speak, but only managed to repeat the same words that his people had been saying for weeks. Please don't hurt us. We surrender. Dr. Price's investigation team made their most disturbing discovery on a small research station in the Outer Rim. The station had been used by Zephyrian scientists to study human psychological weaknesses. The research was designed to find better ways to torture human prisoners. When Dr. Price's team arrived, they found the Zephyrian scientists in the same catatonic state as the others, but the station's computers contained something new. The research data had been completely replaced. Where once there had been studies on human suffering, now there were detailed files on every act of violence committed against humans in the past 40 years. The files were impossibly complete. They contained names, dates, locations, and descriptions of every attack. They included the final words of human victims. They showed the faces of human children who had died in the raids, and at the end of each file was the same message. Every action has consequences. Every choice has a price. Justice delayed is not justice denied. Nancy read through the files with growing horror. The level of detail was staggering. Whoever had compiled this information knew everything about every crime committed against humanity. Captain, Dr. Price said quietly, there's something else. The computers show that these files were created 43 years ago. 43 years? Nancy repeated. That's when humans first joined the Federation. Yes. According to the timestamps, someone has been documenting every act of violence against humans since the day they entered Galactic society. Nancy felt a chill run through her. You're saying someone has been planning this for 43 years? It appears so, but the technology required to create these effects. Dr. Price shook his head. It's beyond anything we understand. Back on Federation Station Proxima Hub, the alien traders who had celebrated humanity's departure were no longer feeling festive. The strange events occurring across the galaxy had everyone nervous. HFY, the Zephyrian merchant who had been so happy to see humans leave, now spent his days staring at empty space. His friends avoided him because he kept muttering about burning children and screaming families. Zexmar tried to comfort his old friend. It's just stress, he said. The market changes have been difficult for everyone. But HFY grabbed his arm with desperate strength. They're coming back, he whispered. The humans are coming back and they're going to make us pay for everything. That's nonsense, Zexmar replied. Humans were weak. They ran away. HFY laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. Weak? You think this is weakness? They're doing things that shouldn't be possible. They're reaching into our minds, into our souls. He leaned closer to Zexmar. What if they were never weak? What if they were just patient? Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. Species that had once dismissed humans as inferior were beginning to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. The impossible events continued to spread. More ships were found with crews trapped in psychological loops. More planets reported the sudden disappearance of their populations. And always the same message appeared in local computer systems. Justice was coming. And humanity, it seemed, had very long memories. Yendar stood alone in his quarters, looking out at the stars. His reports to the Althean government had become increasingly urgent, but his superiors continued to dismiss his concerns. They didn't understand what he saw so clearly. Humanity hadn't fled the galaxy in weakness. They had withdrawn to prepare, and now they were demonstrating capability. The message appeared everywhere at once. Every screen in Federation space lit up with the same image. A human woman sat behind a simple desk, her hands folded calmly in front of her. Behind her, Earth's blue ocean sparkled in the sunlight. My name is Director Kate Walsh, she began. Her voice was steady and calm. I represent the Department of Galactic Affairs for the human species. Across the galaxy, billions of aliens stopped what they were doing to watch. In bars and government buildings, on ships and space stations, every being stared at their screens in fascination and growing fear. For 43 years, Kate continued, humanity attempted to join your galactic community. We followed your laws. We respected your traditions. We sought peaceful solutions to every conflict. On Federation Station Proxima Hub, Yendar leaned forward in his chair. This was what he had been waiting for. The moment when humanity would finally reveal its true intentions. We were met with discrimination, violence, and ultimately genocide, Kate said. You believed our patience was weakness. You were mistaken. The image shifted. Now General Patricia Stone sat beside Director Walsh. The older woman's face was carved from stone, her eyes cold as winter. Some of you have experienced consequences for your actions in recent months, General Stone said. These were demonstrations, warnings, nothing more. She leaned forward slightly. You see, while your species were busy building faster ships and stronger weapons, humanity was developing something far more significant. We learned to manipulate the fundamental forces that govern reality itself. Across the galaxy, alien leaders felt their blood turn cold. The impossible events of the past months suddenly made terrible sense. The crew members you found trapped in psychological loops, General Stone continued, are experiencing justice precisely calibrated to their crimes. They feel the fear and pain they inflicted on innocent humans. Nothing more, nothing less. Director Bow. Walsh spoke again. To demonstrate the scope of our capabilities, we offer the following proof. The view shifted to show Earth's moon. The ancient satellite hung peacefully in space, just as it had for billions of years. Then, without any visible cause or energy discharge, it simply vanished. Every alien watching the broadcast gasped in shock. Moons didn't just disappear. It was physically impossible. Seconds later, the moon reappeared in orbit around the Krillian, homeworld. The dead planet now had 2 natural satellites instead of 1. The relocation of our moon required manipulating gravitational fields, space-time geometry, and quantum probability matrices, Director Walsh explained, as if discussing the weather. We moved 73 quintillion tons of matter across 347 light-years, instantaneously. General Stone smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your most advanced species would need 10,000 years to develop comparable technology. We perfected it last Tuesday. The demonstration continued. A human colony that had been destroyed by raiders simply reappeared, perfectly restored. Every building, every person, every blade of grass exactly as it had been before the attack. The colonists walked among their rebuilt homes, unaware that they had ever died. Death, Director Walsh said simply, is no longer permanent for us. We can restore what was lost, resurrect what was destroyed. The 2.3 million humans murdered at New Boston are alive again, living peaceful lives on a planet far from galactic politics. On the bridge of Captain Nancy Ford's ship, Dr. Alan Price dropped his scanner. That's impossible, he whispered. You can't bring back the dead. But the evidence was right there on their screens. Humans they had seen die were walking and talking, and laughing as if nothing had happened. We have transcended the limitations that still bind your species, General Stone continued. Physics, biology, consciousness, reality itself. These are tools we now control completely. The final demonstration was the most terrifying. Director Walsh gestured to something off camera, and suddenly every aggressive species in the galaxy found their weapons simply stopped working. Warships powered down. Military installations went dark. Soldiers discovered their rifles had turned into flowers. Violence against innocent beings is no longer possible in this galaxy, Director Walsh announced. We have made it so. She paused, to let that sink in. Pirates who attempt raids will find their ships refuse to fire. Armies that march against peaceful worlds will discover their weapons have become garden tools. Any being that tries to harm another for selfish reasons will find themselves physically unable to complete the action. Across the galaxy, warlords and raiders stared at their useless weapons in horror. Some tried to build new ones, only to watch the materials transform into children's toys. This is not a temporary effect, General Stone added. This is the new reality. We have rewritten the fundamental laws that govern this galaxy. Back on Federation Station Proxima Hub, HFY the Zephyrian trader was laughing hysterically. I told you, he said to anyone who would listen. I told you they were coming back, but nobody listened. His friend Zexmar tried to calm him down. It's just technology. We can find ways to counter it. HFY's laughter turned to tears. Counter it? They moved a moon like it was a marble. They brought back the dead. They rewrote physics itself. He grabbed Zexmar's arm. We're insects. To them now. Less than insects. The broadcast continued. Director Walsh's expression softened slightly. However, she said, species that showed kindness to humanity will find their worlds blessed in ways they never imagined. The view shifted, to show the Althean homeworld. Rain fell from clear skies, ending a drought that had lasted for decades. Sick children who had been dying of incurable diseases suddenly sat up in their beds, completely healthy. The Altheans consistently voted for human rights in the Federation Council, Director Walsh explained. They offered aid to human refugees and shared their medical knowledge freely. Their reward is abundance. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. Species that had been kind to humans discovered their planets had perfect weather, unlimited clean energy, and cures for every disease. Their explorers found rich new worlds waiting for them, already terraformed and ready for settlement. This is not magic, General Stone said. This is science beyond your current understanding. We manipulate probability, consciousness, and reality at the quantum level. What seems impossible to you is merely another tool in our workshop. The broadcast neared its end. Director Walsh leaned back in her chair. The Federation Council has voted to offer humanity full membership with unprecedented privileges. We appreciate the gesture, but we must decline. She smiled for the first time during the broadcast. 8-year-old Tommy Harrison from Sacramento will explain our position. The view shifted to show a playground on Earth. A young boy with freckles and a gap-toothed grin sat on a swing, kicking his feet in the dirt. Hi, Tommy said with the casual confidence that only children possess. The grown-ups asked me to tell you something important. He looked directly into the camera. We don't want to join your club anymore. You were really mean to us, and mean kids don't get to play with nice kids. Tommy shrugged as if the matter was perfectly simple. We're going to do our own thing now. We'll be nice to people who are nice to us, and we'll make sure bullies can't hurt anybody ever again. He jumped off the swing and ran toward the playground. Equipment. Thanks for listening, I have to go play now. The broadcast ended with that image. A human child playing peacefully while his species casually demonstrated godlike power over the fundamental forces of reality. In the Federation Council chambers, the alien delegates sat in stunned silence. The Krillian delegate was still repeating his endless mantra of surrender. The Zephyrian representative had fallen from his chair and was curled up on the floor, whimpering. The Federation chairman tried to speak but found he had no words. How do you negotiate with beings who can rewrite the laws of physics? How do you threaten people who can bring back the dead? Yendar stood up slowly. He looked around at his fellow delegates, then spoke into the terrible silence. I believe, he said quietly, that we have learned an important lesson today. He walked toward the exit, pausing only to add, perhaps we should have listened when they asked nicely. Across the galaxy, the new reality was setting in. Humanity had not fled in weakness. They had evolved beyond the need for galactic society. They were no longer asking for acceptance or protection. They were the arbiters of justice now. They were the guardians of peace. They were the shepherds of a galaxy that had spent 43 years proving it couldn't govern itself. And in schools, across 1,000 worlds, alien children began learning a new universal truth. Be kind to everyone you meet. You never know what they're truly capable of when you push them too far. The age of human patience was over. The age of human justice had begun. And no species would ever forget the moment they learned the difference between the two.